Hey there, and welcome into Maybe I'm the Crazy One podcast. And I'm your host, Alex Chandler. Never being one to share a take with anyone I know, I figured I'd start by taking down my ideas and sharing them here. Every week, we will explore parts of the sports world, and I'll give you my viewpoints. Maybe I'm a genius, or maybe I'm just crazy. Tune in with me and find out for yourself. What up, guys, and welcome in. It is episode 17 of Maybe I'm the Crazy One podcast. I am your host, Alex Chandler. Guys, I can't tell you how much stuff we have to go through this week. Thanks to the NBA, we have a bunch of stories to talk about. Well, I guess not a bunch, but we have a few stories. We'll, of course, start with quick hits as we have last week and now this week as well. Quick programming update in case you didn't recognize. We did not have a show on Tuesday. As we told you, going into the season, we were going to adjust the schedule a little bit and miss a couple shows, but still give you content weekly. And so we are going to do this show today, and then we will have a special show out Wednesday or Thursday next week before the kickoff of the Rams-Bills game. And so with that all being said, I'm super excited to bring you this show. Thank you for tuning in. Once football season does start, we will get back to our typical 2 shows per week type of model. And when the NBA starts, man, we're going to have so much content to go through. So thank you for being here with us. We are just getting started. One of the things that we talked about almost 2 months ago was Donovan Mitchell getting traded from the Utah Jazz to somewhere else. And we just said, hey, why don't you trade Colin Sexton for Donovan Mitchell if you're the Cavs, right? Maybe throw in Ochai Agbaji, maybe Lauri Markkanen if he's not a part of your future since you do have Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. And yesterday, Donovan Mitchell was traded for that exact package. So we'll get into that. Gilbert Arenas came out, decided to take shots at Giannis, who in half the time that Gilbert was in the league has done more. And so we'll talk about that a little bit. We'll, of course, break down some of week 3 from the preseason. A lot of players didn't actually play. And so there's not a whole lot to talk about there. More so, we're going to talk about some of the interesting cuts and also now re-signings that have happened for players that were on rosters, now maybe on other rosters, or still looking for a job. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll wrap up with a tiny bit of fantasy football. I'll go ahead and give you a few sleepers that I took in a draft this week, as well as kind of give you my idea of what we could potentially do with the show going forward with fantasy football. Of course, before we get started, I do have to ask you to like, rate, subscribe, share, comment, post, all that fun stuff that we ask you to do every week. We do appreciate your support and assistance. We are getting so close to our goals here. We can taste them. We just need a little bit more push. Please provide that help us with that and provide the those posts that we're asking you to do. Of course, not required. We just love having you here either way, honestly. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started with quick hits today. All right, so our first quick hit story today. Serena Williams played in the U.S. Open this week, and it was dubbed as her final game at the U.S. Open, and that bitch won. And I say that with so much respect because she beat the second-ranked player in the world. And it was a dominating fashion with the third set. And so, excellent job, Serena. I'm rooting for Serena as she moves forward inside of the U.S. Open, this being her last U.S. Open as she plans to retire. And I wish her all the success. She is on the Mount Rushmore of players that have just absolutely dominated their sport. Think Tom Brady, think LeBron, you think MJ if you want, Wayne Gretzky, Serena. Nobody's done it the same way that Serena has. It's going to be sad to see her go, but it's also like the tennis sport itself is in a lot of amazing young women's hands. And so I have no questions that the sport will continue with Coco McGuff, Naomi Osaka, Halep, just to name 3 right there off the top of my head. And so, with a myriad of other women that are excellent tennis players. And so that's perfectly fine where it's going. But Serena pathfinded her way to stardom, 20 years ago. And, if you want to say, Richard did it, sure. But her success, her skill, her ability is the reason that she is where she is right now. And so with that being said, Serena, commend you. Absolutely. I'm rooting for you. I've rooted for you every single Grand Slam that you have been in. That's, type of tennis fan I truly am. And so that's, excellent work throughout your entire career. And let's go finish it off strong. Next, Derrick Henry got a raise. Basically, they added 2 voidable years to the end of the deal and gave him $2 million this year. And then it's, he'll be back at the table basically next season, asking for another extension. And hey, here's the thing. I understand Derrick Henry may be one of one in terms of body size right now in the NFL as well as ability. But at the same time, he's had the largest workload of any player in the last 3 years. And he was hurt for part of last season. And so it's just a lot. And as he gets older, as he ages, I don't know if paying him more was the right decision. Obviously, keeping your players happy is a part of your culture. So at the end of the day, you got to do what you got to do. I'm just not a huge fan of paying people before you absolutely need to. And also, at the end of the day, he didn't earn the contract that he's getting paid. I know he got hurt, but just because you're hurt doesn't mean that it excuses your production in terms of getting paid. Now, getting a contract, if he was out of contract and re-signing a contract, I think that's acceptable. But you don't get an extension for getting hurt. I'm sorry. That shouldn't be how the sport works. Next topic has to do with a few injuries. Andre Dillard broke his forearm, and Harold Landry tore his ACL. Andre Dillard, backup left tackle for the Eagles. And for Harold Landry, obviously middle linebacker, outside linebacker for the Titans. And so the Titans already, we have 2 stories. Wow. 2 stories, 2 opportunities for the Titans. But that's a big blow for them. Their defense wasn't great in the first place, and losing a superstar like Landry really kind of puts them behind the 8 ball in terms of defense. Again, we faded the Titans about 2 months ago. And so it's just coming to fruition right now. We're going to let it keep doing its thing as well, because this is cake. So, next, the big thing here with NCAA, this is breaking news. Now, may not be breaking at the time if you're listening to this, but at the time of us recording this at least, it's breaking news. Starting in 2026, the NCAA will be doing a 12-team playoff. And so the way that will more than likely work is it will be 4 teams with a bye, 8 teams that play, an opening round, leaving you with 4 teams to play those 4 teams. And then you would have, 4 games there. Then you'd have your semifinal and a final. That's just quick work on how that tournament would work. If you have any questions on that, look up tournaments. I mean, it's a positive move, but ultimately we've talked about what we would do for realignment and what we think will end up happening. And the smartest thing that would happen is just going to a 4-conference system, making it regionalized, west, north, south, east, and going from there. If you want to have conferences and have Oklahoma in one versus another and trade, that's totally fine. Oklahoma doesn't need to be in a South Conference. They can be in an East Conference, whatever you want to do. But ultimately, it's going to lead to better success, better play on the field. Additionally, it's going to make these moves that NIL kids are making a lot less impactful, because you no longer are going from group of 5 to a power 5 school. It basically, levels the playing field for everybody. 4 conferences, you win, everybody wins. Which then leads us to our last quick hit story, which, just like last week with the Chet Holmgren story, we're going to quick hit a little bit longer on this one, so it might as well just end up being a full segment. And I hate to do this. It's really not what I like to do, right? But I gotta put some questions out into the world. And you can disagree with my opinions on Russell Wilson, because this is who this is about. And if he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback or not, if he's there or not, long term, if it's more about the football for him, or if it's more about, being a star and a celebrity right now. guys, this contract that the Broncos just signed into, the 5 years, $245 million extension that locks him up through 2028, I believe is what it is absolutely terrible. It's great for Russ. I mean, Russ got his money. He deserves, to get paid. Every player deserves to get paid what they get paid. I have no problem with players getting money. My problem is more from an organizational perspective. And then the subsequent things that Russ has came out and said since then. In no world do I believe that a quarterback who has not won more than one playoff game in 7 years deserves a $50 million extension. Never do I believe that a quarterback who has gotten 0 MVP votes, even though we believe that he has had MVP caliber seasons, deserves a $250 million extension. And I think it's really, really, really fiscally irresponsible to pay somebody guaranteed money through their 38th year in the 38 years old, and I think it's going to end up being his 16th year in the season when he's never played a down for you. He had an injury last year in Russell Wilson, and while Russell, it wasn't a major injury. It wasn't an Achilles. It wasn't an ACL. He got to come back and play in the middle of the season, which is totally fine. He was not the same Russell after the injury. And you can say that was immediately after and he got his form back. Okay. Was that or was it that, they were playing inferior competition compared to the weeks that they had played prior? Because it was like the Packers that he struggled against. It was like the Rams he struggled against. So, I don't know. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right because then it also, he's already 34. This is another 7 years in his career. He's going to be 41 at the end of his contract. There's only been one player we've seen be successful after the age of 40. Really two if you want to count Brett Favre, that is. But, Tom Brady is the only player that has had true success after turning 40. Peyton Manning, I know, won a Super Bowl. He was a shell of himself. Aaron Rodgers is about to hit 40, so maybe he could do it. Ben Roethlisberger looked terrible. Phillip Rivers looked terrible. Drew Brees at the end looked terrible. So it's not a winning move. And then to come out in a press conference, announcing the deal and saying, I decided to do this deal because I wanted to leave money on the table. Bitch, where? Bitch, where? Where did you leave money on the table, Russ? Because what I'm seeing is out of a $220 million cap hit, total cap for a 53-man team, your cap accounts for a minimum of $50 million. So 49.9. You left some money on the table. Okay. You didn't reset the market. Okay. It was because you believe in Super Bowls and winning? Maybe it's because the team was not willing to go higher. Maybe they said there is a point that we're not willing to pay you this money. And if you want to continue here, that's totally fine. We'll keep you here. We would love to have you. We'll give you this guaranteed money. But he's not leaving any money on the table. He's still the second highest cap hit in the league behind Aaron Rodgers and made $165 million guaranteed. I guess you left some money there because Deshaun Watson got a fully guaranteed deal, except your deal is more in overall annual value. So did you leave money on the table, Russ? Taking 25% of the cap is leaving money on the table. And I understand that we're about to have a new TV deal and new money is going to be coming in. Caps are going to be reset. So instead of 220, there's a chance it's up as high as $270 million. But guess what? That just moves your cap hit from just over 25% or just under 25%, that is, to just under 18%. You're still taking up 1/6 of your team's cap space with one player. Now, I know minimum contracts, it only counts the top 51 or whatever it is. It doesn't count all 53 players. There's a lot of machinations to what the cap structure actually does and how you can manipulate it. So I understand that there's going to be some manipulation to this contract as well as manipulation to their cap structure. But if you do believe in Jerry Jeudy, he has an extension coming up. Cortland Sutton's going to have a new extension coming up. You're going to have to pay Javonte Williams if you want to keep him. Bradley Chubb's in a contract year. You have Justin Simmons, who's playing on a franchise tag, I believe, still. So, like, you're either going to lose the talent that's around Russ because you can't sign all of them. It's just not going to be possible. Or you're going to lose the talent. Because I don't think those players are going to play less. I don't think those players are going to produce less. And I don't think you want them to produce less because, you're paying your quarterback a shit ton of money. I think you just messed up. And it's okay. But, you paid Russ as if he is a top 3 quarterback in the league. At best, he's 6 right now. At best. He's not better than Josh Allen. He's not better than Mahomes. He's not better than Rodgers. He's not better than Brady. And he's not better than Stafford. Those are just facts. You can question and argue he's better than Burrow. I'll let you have that. You can question and argue if he's better than Justin Herbert. I'll let you have that. Derek Carr, I'll let you have it. Dak Prescott even, I'll let you have it. But he's not better than those first 5 guys for sure. Definitely the first 4. I'll even let you argue. I'll even do it. You know what? You know what I mean? I'll let you argue the Matt Stafford stuff. But he's unequivocally not better than the first 4 guys listed. But yet you're paying him as the second best guy. And I understand that's how contracts work. It doesn't matter to me. Sometimes being fiscally responsible, making the smart move, which would have been not to trade it for him in the first place, but making the smart move is always the right move. And one, you probably could have gotten Jalen Hurts for a 2nd round pick. Or maybe just 1 first instead of 3 firsts, and had about the same productivity or efficiency that the offense is going to have, because I think your skill position players have ceilings, and it's not necessarily about Russ, but he's also a little bit better of a runner as well. But you decided to go for Russ. And he didn't have to have a contract. He's under contract this year and next. You chose to give it to him. You could have waited. You could have seen how this worked out. Because what happens now, if it looks terrible, you're firing your vice president, your GM, your coach, way before you're trading Russell Wilson. Because you've now sunk $170 million into him. And you didn't sink nearly $170 million into those 3 other guys. He has so much leverage in that organization now. It's insane. And to be fair, credit to Russ for getting it. Understand, I'm not criticizing Russ for taking what they offered and gave to him. I'm criticizing the organization. It's a bad move. Very bad move. And I think ultimately it's going to come back and bite him. If you want to argue that Russ is not about what's on the field, it's about off the field like I do sometimes, I would agree with you. And this isn't about the on versus off the field stuff. On the field, he's still an excellent player. But I think he does care more about the off-field stuff. And so I think that might end up hurting him. But maybe this new Wilson ball can save him that they're going to be using on Thursday Night Football. So, whatever happens. We'll see what happens. But ultimately, that's my take on the Russell Wilson stuff. And that's Quick Hits today. So we're going to be moving on to recap some season or preseason 3 stuff. And then we'll move into some basketball. And then, like I said, fantasy football last. And so with that, week 3 of the preseason came and went. We did see Baker play. Baker played excellent for the Panthers. Then we also saw, a couple other starters play. Tua played again for the Dolphins. But then Skylar Thompson just rocked out again. And this ended up actually earning him a roster spot. So shout out to Skylar Thompson, K-State alum. And that's incredible. I think there's a chance that he could take some snaps or even get Teddy Bridgewater traded or terminated by the end of the trade deadline, so week 8. But I think Skylar Thompson has a true future in this league, at least right now, the way that it looks. Another interesting move was that Sony Michel got cut, and now he has signed with the Chargers. And so that is going to be just another tool that Justin Herbert has in his offense, which will be incredible for him. And it'll be very scary for the rest of the AFC. Additionally, C.J. Gardner-Johnson got traded from the Saints to the Eagles for pennies on the dollar, and they ended up cutting Anthony Harris as well. And so there was a bunch of other moves. A guard went from the Bears to the Steelers. The Bears then made another trade. I think it was with the Texans. Texans let go, made some very curious decisions with a few players, but, did what they did. The punter up in Buffalo got released and waived, but that wasn't about roster accommodations. That's about something else. And so there was not a whole lot of intriguing or interesting moves. It was a pretty quick week on, really honestly. And so we're really excited for next week, and we're going to have that, preseason, I guess regular season preview next week as well. And so we'll get more into that. I was just so blown away and impressed by Skylar Thompson. Josh Johnson for the Broncos also got cut, by the way, since we were talking about the Broncos. And so they'll be using Ripien as their backup. So it is cool there. But for the majority of teams, they already had their rosters set. However, one of the most intriguing moves that I saw was that the Eagles made another trade with the Vikings, and that was to send Jalen Reagor, their 2020 draft pick, I think it was the 21st overall, to the Vikings, pairing him with J.J. Jefferson and Adam Thielen. And if you remember, Justin Jefferson was the 22nd pick of the 2020 draft. And so, looking back at it, definitely the wrong choice now that he's no longer on the team. I thought he could potentially resurrect, something and be a serviceable receiver this year. Obviously, that did not turn out to be the case, and that's okay. Some players need refreshes and restarts on other teams. I think Philly is a hard place to play. And especially with expectations, because if you don't live up to those expectations, just like with Donovan McNabb to a degree, Carson Wentz to a major degree, most of the receivers that have been picked, Nelson Aguilar comes to mind recently as well. There's been some players that have talent and truly do and can be players in this league and perform at a high level. They just can't make it in Philly, and it's because the media, the fans, they're all terrible. In a loving way, by the way. That's not a terrible, oh man, they're the Cowboys. Cowboys. The Cowboys are terrible. And, I'll stand on that. And I'm sorry, Cowboys fans, if you don't like that, but that's my personal belief. I think the Cowboys have too much or too overrated, but that's a different story for a different day. But yeah, it was interesting to see that. So hopefully Jalen Reagor can get back on track there in Minnesota. Good luck to him. And, good luck to everybody going into next week. I'll give you my slight tweaks to the seasonal rankings. I don't think it's going to adjust any playoff predictions. It might adjust a couple of the matchups per se, but I still think that it's going to be a Chargers and 49ers Super Bowl with the Chargers coming out on top. And so, that being said, we've talked about one league in winning titles, right? Let's talk about another champion from another league, and that's Giannis. So earlier this week, it might have been end of last week, Gilbert Arenas, former Washington Wizard and a couple other teams as well throughout his tenure, came out and said that Giannis Antetokounmpo is not the best player in the NBA, and it's not even close. And he's not even close to being the best player in the NBA. He only knows how to. Just because he's a champion doesn't mean that and he's won all these things doesn't mean that he's the best player. He still doesn't understand the game. And I just have one question for you, Gilbert. If you ever do hear this, and feel free to come on the show as well and defend yourself if you would like. But my question is, what the fuck did you do? Now, I recognize I'm sitting here in front of a microphone saying all this stuff. I never played in the NBA, so you did more than I did. But here's the entirety of the list of what accomplishments you had that are of note in your career. You were a 3-time All-Star, 3-time All-NBA team, and then the 2002-2003 Most Improved Player of the Year. I can just tell you right now what Giannis has done in the last 4 years. That was in 12 years, by the way, for you, Gilbert. Gilbert, let me tell you what Giannis actually last 6 years, okay? So in half the time, here's what Giannis has done. 6-time All-Star, 6-time All-NBA, 5-time All-Defensive Team, 2-time MVP, 1-time NBA champion, 1-time MVP of the finals. He was also a Defensive Player of the Year and is a part of the 75th anniversary team. Hey, Gilbert, maybe when you start talking about players, and I understand that's part of your job now a little bit, and you're just a goofy dude, but like maybe when you start talking about players and trying to take shots at players, maybe don't take a shot at the one player in the league that kind of has an unimpeachable resume. Yeah, he won 2 MVPs and was, well and beyond one of the best players in 2020 when they got swept by, lost in 5 to the Heat. And then obviously last year he lost to the Celtics in 7. But come on. Man is like on a mission. Last week he scored 60 points and had 20 rebounds, 15 assists and 10 blocks in one single game. And shot 22 of 23 from the field. It's not a matter of him knowing basketball or not. He's not Kyrie Irving, I understand. And I know these people who quote-unquote know basketball and know how to, know real ball. I know those guys believe Kyrie is the best player that has ever played in the league, but that's just not true. If you want to say that, Giannis doesn't have a fluid jump shot, that's totally fine. That doesn't take away from his ability to play the fucking game of basketball when he's the most dominant athlete, 12 to 18 feet and in. Like, it's just impossible and unrealistic to expect that you're going to stop Giannis Antetokounmpo if he's at full strength and full steam running at the basket. The man can run and take two steps from from half court and basically be dunking the ball. The man is a freak of nature and an athletic phenom that has then taken his talent and work ethic, combined it to become the best player in the league. And so I would challenge Gilbert Arenas, who is better? Because last year Giannis was in the top 3 in scoring. He was the best defensive player in the league and was on the team that was, a high-ended seed. Like, if Chris Middleton's there, they probably win their 2nd straight ring. And then we're talking about Giannis and an elite class of having 2 Finals MVPs and 2 MVPs to go along with 2 titles. That group of people is a very small group. Ironically, it's most of them minus Jokic and Steve Nash. Like the guys that have won back-to-back MVPs is there's like 13 of them. Jokic and Steve Nash are 2 of the only 2 that haven't won titles. But it would be one step further because Giannis would be one of only I think it's 4 players to win back-to-back Finals MVPs and MVPs. He would also be one of the first players to win 2 Finals MVPs and 2 regular season MVPs in the span of 4 years. And so he's been absolutely incredible, one of the best players ever to play the game, and he is absolutely the best player in the league right now, which is hard for me to say being a LeBron fan, and LeBron's still playing at a high level, but there's absolutely no consideration for anybody else, in my opinion right now, that Giannis is not the best player in the league. Fuck a jump shot. He can still score 32 points without it a game. However, there's another player that also doesn't have a great jump shot that has been, the topic of conversation this whole season, or this offseason rather, and something finally happened with him, and that's Donovan Mitchell. So, on Thursday, Donovan Mitchell was traded, and Donovan Mitchell was traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now, you might remember in the Golden State of Mind episode 4, I believe that was, back on July 15th, we talked about some fake trades. And one of our fake trades that we talked about was Donovan Mitchell. And I said, you know what? I understand everybody wants him to be a Knick. I really, truly do understand the desire to see Donovan Mitchell in Madison Square Garden. However, from a basketball perspective, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense for them. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for Donovan. What it would be really interesting to see, however, is seeing Donovan Mitchell go to the Cleveland Cavaliers. And you could trade, Colin Sexton, who's a restricted free agent right now, and a couple pieces like Ochai Agbaji, sorry. Rookie player that they drafted this year, and then maybe like a role player like a Lauri Markkanen, since you have Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. But they did just that. Threw in 3 first-round picks. I think that was a little bit too much. They probably only needed to do either 2 pick swaps or the 3 first-round picks. They did both, so basically Utah controls their draft for the next 5 years. However, they didn't have to lose any true rotational players in the process. They did lose a little bit of depth in Markkanen. I understand he did play minutes and played well, but he wasn't a major factor on their team and somebody you could easily replace, even if it's just giving Evan Mobley and Jared Allen a couple extra minutes a game themselves. And so, man, first off, Cleveland looks nasty. Darius Garland, all-star. Spida, all-star. You can put whoever the hell you want at the 3. I think you put Okikari there. Isaac Okoro, sorry. And I think I said maybe Isaac was part of the trade instead of Ochai. But, that's neither here nor there. We might have missed one player. Ultimately, they're about the same caliber since Okoro is a young player as well. But you keep Isaac Okoro, that's totally fine. You could start freaking Dean Wade there, man, and it'd be totally fine. But then you go down to the middle. You got Jared Allen, Evan Mobley in your 4 and 5 interchangeably. They're just so nasty. They still have their bench, their defensive, they're a defensive nightmare, even with Donovan Mitchell being there. So I think they can be a really good team. I really do. And I think this could be the first time since LeBron was there that they're in contention for having a top 4 seed in the East. So we will end up doing those. The NBA season starts in October. So at the end of this month in September, we will talk more NBA and kind of go through what my kind of thoughts and feelings on these teams are going to be as, training camps start, preseason workouts go through. We see who gets potentially hurt, who comes back healthy, who I thought they look like in these preseason games, and then we'll make some determinations. There is less preseason games in the NBA. So we'll have less to really go through and dictate and judge what we think will happen. But, we will do that. But the second thing on this, guys, but from a non-basketball perspective, just solely a personal perspective from us here at Maybe I'm the Crazy One podcast, bro, we fucking told you so. We told you this was the best trade. We told you almost the exact trade that was going to happen. And lo and behold, Kobe Altman must have been listening because goddamn, did we hit this on the head. 2 months ago. I want credit. You got to throw it to me because that's incredible. You can't tell me that we worked our ass off, to try to provide you quality, valuable content, right? And then all of a sudden that shit happens. That's so exciting for us here. We're so happy that this happened. We're so happy for Donovan as well. But for us personally, because we got this right, we feel great. So it's great to be a part of that here. We'll keep bringing you these things too, because this isn't the last trade request we're gonna deal with on this show. We'll probably get a couple in the NFL here in the next couple of weeks, and I'll have some ideas, out of the box things that we don't typically see or what the media is talking about, and those things tend to happen. I hit it with this one with Donovan Mitchell. I hit it with LeBron going back to Cleveland from Miami. I hit it with Tom Brady leaving New England to go to Tampa Bay. So, I mean, who knows? I might just hit one more, in our time here. And so, with that, we'll go ahead and close our book on the NBA today. There's a lot of great stuff that we're going to talk with NBA over the next few weeks and months. And so we'll get back to the NBA in another episode, but we'll move on to some little bit of fantasy football stuff, and then we'll wrap the show. Again, not a whole lot of new material came out, but we had a lot of feelings about the little bit of sports news that occurred, and so we wanted to make sure that we got that out there this week for everybody. Also, provided the quality to it too. So Hopefully you enjoyed that part of it. If you're not a fantasy football fan, I hope I gave you enough buffer here. It made you feel like we had an exit to the show. If you want to pass forward, or skip forward through the fantasy football stuff, that's fine. There'll be a quick rundown at the end of the show of what next week and the week after will look like, and then we'll wrap. So you're basically done here at that point, unless you're here for the fantasy football stuff. And so with you guys being here now still, you're obviously here for fantasy football. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on it. I got a couple drafts still to go. I got people that listen to this show that are in those drafts, so I don't want to give too much away. What I will say is that I will give you a couple sleepers per position. Now, you know when to start drafting sleepers. Some of these guys have low ADPs but are worth way higher drafting rights. And so one, for example, I drafted George Pickens in one of my leagues this week. He had an average ADP of 148, which in most leagues is like 12th round. George Pickens is going to be a top 17 receiver in fantasy this year. George Pickens will be a top 17 player in fantasy this year. I'm saying he's going to do similar numbers to what Claypool did his rookie year, which would have been about 800 yards and a few touchdowns. And, really take over and solidify his role in that team. I think him, Claypool, and Deontay Johnson can make something special in terms of receiving core. And I think it's really hard to cover them. And so if you have Najee in the backfield, you're going to get those one-on-one coverages. And George Pickens has done some excellent things in the preseason, as well as his career at Georgia, to make me believe that he's going to be an excellent player. Another one that is interesting to me is Andy Isabella. Andy Isabella plays for the Cardinals. And if you remember, DeAndre Hopkins is hurt. Marquise Hollywood Brown has some weird shit going on with speeding, and they lost Christian Kirk. And so that leaves Andy Isabella as a huge target for them. Additionally, I think one of the best tight ends this year could also be Zach Ertz. Zach Ertz is going to have a massive share, unless it's going to James Conner right now. It's not really going to be doing a whole lot for them. And so I think it's going to be Zach Ertz and Andy Isabella running that offensive scheme for the Cardinals down there. Another interesting one, but this is at a running back position, Dameon Pierce for the Houston Texans. I know he's a rookie, but he was so good that they were able to cut Marlon Mack and believe that Marlon Mack wasn't better than the rookie and that the rookie was going to start over him. And so they cut Marlon Mack after they had just signed him, which is insane. And so with that being said, I think Dameon Pierce is going to be electric. Whether it's on the Texans, or if he was on another team, I think he's going to be an excellent star. Sony Michel, I think, is an interesting decision now that he is with the Chargers, just because I don't trust Austin Eckler's health. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure he's never played a full 16-game season as the lead back. So I don't know if that's something that, this season will bring for him. And so I think Sony Michel will get enough touches. And with that offensive, firepower on that team being so large, I think it's a situation where he could come in as a backup and average 6-7 yards a carry, 9-10 times a game, and get you some valuable points in a deeper leagues. Quarterback-wise, as we told you last week, we don't believe in taking quarterbacks super early. We ended up getting Devontae Adams, and so we took Derek Carr because Derek Carr was going to go before we drafted again. I think it was in the 6th or 7th round, and so we're really high on that combination there. Trevor Lawrence, I feel like, is going pretty low in some of these drafts. I think he could be somebody that you could look at to be, a place filler if you wanted to spend your early options on receivers and running backs. However, quarterback is hard to say, like, this is going to be a sleeper, right? I don't think Geno Smith is going to be a sleeper. I think there's a chance if you take Jimmy Garoppolo, he's starting somewhere by the end of the season. I think they could look to trade him. I know he just restructured his deal for $7 million. And had a no trade clause added, but that just means that he can't get traded where he doesn't want to go. And so that's probably going to end up happening mid-season. However, if it doesn't and he stays there all year, that will be, the surprise of the season, I think, for everybody. From the tight end perspective, like I said, I think Zach Ertz is a huge pick that you could look at in terms of, if you're looking for value. I think I got him in the 10th or 12th round in a 12-man league. And so that was, fairly late for me to get a high-end tight end, because I think he will be a top 5, top 8 tight end this year. So you could get him pretty late as well. Other than that, sleepers come and go, and it really depends on what the rest of your draft does, right? If you have a lot of guys in your draft, or a lot of gals, or a lot of people in general that don't know how to draft or are on auto draft, if you're in a league, which is a live online draft, and you have a lot of people doing auto draft, save your bench picks basically for a little bit later and focus on those positional players. If you go into a league with 12 players, there's 4 of you drafting, right? Once you get out of, the top 4 rounds where they've taken their 2 running backs and their 2 receivers, and now they're working to fill the rest of their starting roles, you could be snagging some of those other players in later rounds, or in those rounds, that they're no longer going to be looking for those. So if you wanted to use an early round pick on a Patrick Mahomes, or, a Joe Burrow, Matt Stafford, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers type, player, you totally could, because you can say, hey, I may not get wide receiver 1 here, or even wide receiver 5, depending on where you're drafted in the draft. But the difference between wide receiver 5 and wide receiver 10, or 15, whatever it may end up being, is not very high. And it's not more than, QB1 versus QB7. And so you don't want to be behind the train, because the way that auto draft works. However, you want to make sure that you are protecting yourself in your fantasy draft from those auto drafting snakes. So with that all being said, that's our show. We don't have a lot more to go over this week. We will we will not have a show on Tuesday like we did this week. Instead, we will have a special week show Wednesday or Thursday. We will talk about, our tweaks to what our preseason predictions were for each of the 32 NFL teams, if there is any that I have. We will also talk about any current events that are going on, and then we will prime the weekend of football. And then, we will show it back up next Tuesday. We'll recap, and then next Friday we'll go over, the Friday following, I guess, we will go over week 2. We're so excited to have football back, guys. College football starts this weekend as well. There were some games last night, some games on Thursday as well, or Wednesday as well. And so it's an exciting time. We got sports back in full swing, and we're excited to be a part of it this year. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. My name is Alex Chandler. This is Maybe I'm the Crazy One podcast, and let me know. Am I a genius? Or am I just crazy? Thank you.